Knoxville is ever-changing, from new businesses to redevelopment projects, decisions by city council to festivals downtown. There's always something going on in our city. There's an online publication that delves into all things Knoxville, Hyperlocal. It's called Inside of Knoxville, and we wanted to learn more about that. So we invited the publisher and editor, Leslie Bateman, into our podcast studio to tell us more. Here's our discussion. Leslie, thank you for being with us. We appreciate you taking the time to stop by the studio.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so Inside of Knoxville, we're going to dig deep into that. But first, I want to dig deep into you, Leslie Bateman, the journalist. And what I learned prior to, the young woman who was born and raised in Knoxville.
Yes.
Tell me about yourself.
Yes, born and raised. I grew up in Fountain City, so not too far from here. I went to UT. And kind of cut my teeth in journalism at the Daily Beacon, the editorially independent student-run newspaper, which is fantastic. And actually, one of my colleagues there was Wes Rucker, who your late Wes Rucker, whom the studio is named for. It was we just learned a lot together, and we're really you get so much responsibility and get to figure it out as you go. And so that's where I sort of discovered journalism. I grew up, I loved to read, and I would read the Knoxville News Sentinel from cover to cover, like every day.
Like, how old would you have been when you were reading this?
In elementary school.
Oh, my. You were a journalist from day one, it sounds like then.
Yes. And let's see, in college, at the same time, I was working downtown at a little pizzeria called the Tomato Head.
Oh, yes. Love that place.
That.
Yeah.
And it was it was the early 2000s or around 2000, and there just wasn't very much going on downtown. Even on Market Square, there was just the Tomato Head and Preservation Pub, which had previously been a music venue. There was this little soup kitchen on the corner. Of course, there was the Subway.
Oh, yes.
Long live the Subway.
That. Yes, exactly.
And in a little karaoke bar called McLeod's, where Urban Outfitters is now. And so there wasn't much going on, but I really, at the same time as I was falling in love with journalism, I was falling in love with downtown also. And things were just about to change. After grad school, I went to work for a newspaper that was really covering a lot of the things that were happening downtown called Metropulse, our late all-weekly. And so it was really neat to see downtown coming about from that ground level up and see some of those pivotal early investments and changes that were coming. So that's, sort of my journalism career dovetailing with my downtown, interests and passion. So.
And that passion is still there. Does it blow your mind when you look back to those days to where we are now with this city and the growth it's experienced?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, it's just been, in the early 2000s, when we were working down there, it was just kind of tumbleweeds, and people came downtown to work in their offices, and then they left at night. I was thinking the other day, in college we would play this game that sounds just wild to me now, but it would be like cops and robbers, and we would start in the far end of Fort Sanders, and there'd be people, the cops were on bicycles, and then there were robbers, and we were all on foot, and we'd do it at night, probably late at night. And the goal was to get all the way from Fort Sanders to Market Square without being seen by or spotlighted, with one of the cops.
This sounds like fun.
It was so fun.
Yeah.
But it was wild to think, we could make it that whole span and really maybe run into a couple cars on Henley Street, but there was nobody, it was just that empty at nighttime. So,
and it's anything but now.
Right, yeah.
It's funny you say tumbleweeds. That's what I used to tell folks when I moved here. Tumbleweeds would go down Gay Street after 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
Now, you're dodging traffic at 10 o'clock at night. So it is truly transformed. Yet that passion, as you said, about Knoxville and telling Knoxville stories, it remains, and to the point that you took on this position of editor, publisher of Inside of Knoxville last year. It had been around more than a decade, but you took on this. But first off, let's talk about Inside of Knoxville. What is it? Explain it to me.
InsideofKnoxville.com. So it was founded in 2010 by Alan Sims, who lived downtown. And
AKA the Urban Guy.
The Urban Guy,
Yeah.
Yep, that was his alias, his pen name. And he just sort of started a blog. Originally, fun fact, it was called Stuck Inside Knoxville because he's a big Bob Dylan fan, and that's a Bob Dylan reference, and eventually was talked into change. Like, that feels a little claustrophobic, Alan, so he changed it. But he just started blogging about his experiences of living downtown, and then gradually it kind of gained momentum, and people started looking to it for, what's going on with that building? Or, I missed the Dogwood Arts Festival Chalk Walk this weekend, but, Alan will have photos on his blog. And so it became, a trusted and a resource for folks that were interested in that part of town. So it kind of grew and grew over the years. He took it, more seriously, was finally able to, make a go of it, make it his whole job. We cover downtown business, development, arts and culture. We have an events calendar every week. We put out one long-form story a day, Monday through Friday, and then the events calendar goes out on Sundays. And it's funny, I say we cover, it used to be all things downtown, sort of in a strict sense of like, the central business district outline. But now we're kind of pushing out further in different directions because there's so much exciting stuff happening, not just downtown, but in these sort of like urban feeling pockets on the periphery, like, the South Waterfront and all that's happening in South Knoxville. And there are exciting things popping up on Magnolia and MLK and out Broadway and Central into Happy Holler. So we try and, I think a lot about, how do I define urban? And I think the best definition I've come to is when people are living, working, and playing in close proximity to one another and sharing spaces. And, you know it when you feel it, you know?
You do. You took on the role of publisher editor last year. Why? Why did you want that challenge?
Well, let's see. So after the Metropulse, which I think ended up being the editor-in-chief of that, and I think I left there in 2008. 2009, kept doing a little freelancing, but had a sort of wild card career twist. I've always ridden and competed horses, and so I became an equestrian sports journalist for 10 or 12 years, which was...
That is so interesting. Wow.
I know, right? It's like a little plot twist.
Exactly.
But it was fantastic. It was, I covered the Olympic Games, the World Championships. I was, in Europe a lot of the time, covering horse shows over there because equestrian sport's really big over there. Some people actually, I think, assumed that I'd moved out of town because I was traveling so much, but I was always, still here.
I'm still here.
Still here. Had a kid, couldn't do all that traveling. And so I sort of looked back around and was like, you know what, I'd love to get back involved in the downtown scene and sharing those stories. And I started out, went back to work at a downtown PR firm, and then and started freelancing for Alan Inside of Knoxville. And at that point, he'd had the website going for 15 years, and he was ready to retire, and he wants to travel.
Sure.
And so I was kind of looking for my next chapter, and so it just dovetailed completely perfectly. He was able to retire 15 years to the date of his very first blog post on Inside of Knoxville. And, and I got to come home to what I've, really feels like a heart role for me and was a very formative, absolutely
kind of that full circle. I mean, Love your journey. Love your journey. It's fascinating. Inside of Knoxville is Hyperlocal. Let's talk about the importance of hyperlocal journalism in a day and time when there is just a vast amount of information and websites and social media outlets that you can go to. Your focus is totally on Knoxville. Why is that so important in the world of journalism, honing in on one thing?
I mean, that's you're in that work too. It's important work, and there's so many stories that deserve to be told. So many special things happening all around us that deserve more visibility, and so if we can help tell those stories, I think that's really important. It's important for businesses. It's important for organizations. It's important to create, help share the narratives that help other people fall in love with downtown and the city that they live in.
I will often say this. It's more important for you to know what's going on in your own backyard, in your town, as opposed to what's happening in Washington, D.C. or halfway across the country, because these are stories, these are situations, these are things that are happening that impact you directly.
Absolutely, yes, and I think it helps you feel more invested and connected to the community that you live in. Also, if you can walk down the street and be like, oh, I've heard about that, or there's a show happening at the Bijou Theater or the Tennessee Theater, and you feel like you can engage better with the places around you and the people around you.
I went on your website and I was looking just about you all, and you have a list of we believes. We believe local journalism is a public good, and that is what you all are doing. Okay, so you mentioned this, knowing how much happens in Knoxville, Center City, and Spoked Out, like you mentioned. How do you determine the stories that big story that you're going to do daily?
Oh my gosh,
that's a challenge, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Because on any given day, I think I can think of 10 stories that I'd like to be writing that day.
Right.
And so a lot of it is just following my nose. I write about what I'm interested in, what I'm curious about. Some things surprise me, and some things that I think are going to lead me somewhere just kind of dead end. So it's a constantly being curious. Just never knowing what you're going to find when you pursue a storyline, and taking readers along with you on that journey.
So what interests you? You said it's those things, because I think that as a reporter, we want to cover as much as we can, but there are those things that naturally interest us. What interests you?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I mean, I could write about arts and culture every day. I love it. I think that that's one thing that has really gone away, I think, and is important to keep writing about on the local level is, that art, what's that art exhibition, and all these amazing cultural jewels that we have downtown and throughout Knoxville. So I love writing about. I mean, I could write about art exhibits every single day, but those don't get the big clicks.
But it makes your heart happy, and that's all that matters.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Another change I'm sure you've seen in growing up and becoming an adult and a journalist in Knoxville, the experiences and the opportunities have just exploded, especially in the arts and culture scene. Okay, I'm going to ask you a question that I always dread, but I'm going to ask you, and you're probably going to be like, don't put me on the spot like this, but is there a favorite story that stands out to you that at your time at Inside of Knoxville? It's such a hard question to answer, isn't it? Because there's so many.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
I know. It's always hard. I feel for you. That's wrong of me to do that. But there's so many, and it is hard to compartmentalize.
Yeah. So here's an example. So you and it's relevant to this time of year, but you hear the ice cream trucks go around.
Absolutely.
They go, hello.
Yeah.
Like plays a little circus music.
Exactly.
And I'm just like, what? where they come from? How are there like 5 of them? Are there 500 of them? Who owns them? Is it a
Who are the
money
people behind
laundering
the
scheme? I don't know. And so
questions we all want answered.
We all answer, Right. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to get to the bottom of this.
I love
and and I was fully prepared to be disappointed and bored, by this. I'm like, oh, they're just owned by a corporation,
right.
and they're all, there's 1,000 of them on a parking lot somewhere. And but anyway, so I started kind of asking. I'd ask some drivers, like, well, for information, and they led me to the company that owned it, which was called I think it's like Pele. Okay. And so I've talked to the owner, and and he's like, well, come check out our business. And I was like, oh, it's literally downtown, headquartered downtown. Just, you can almost see the Gay Street Bridge from here. It's turned out to be this wonderful story of an immigrant family who moved to America, started with one ice cream truck, built up this sort of ice cream truck empire, just so heartwarming, just one of those where you're just like, oh, like,
it's the American dream.
Is such a beautiful, it's an American dream. It's such a beautiful story. And so just I think it's so satisfying when you just kind of like follow your nose on something and find out something that really surprises you.
Absolutely. Keep telling those stories. That's what makes Knoxville what it is. And okay, last question, vanilla or chocolate?
Vanilla.
Okay, team vanilla. Okay.
What about you?
Chocolate all the way, every day. Leslie, I could talk to you on and on, but thank you again. And once again, insideofknoxville.com.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.